for an entire lap. So you basically have to limp back home without any regen anymore.
Oh.
And those knock-on effects this year are obviously way bigger than last year. So how do you recover from a moment like that? Is it safe enough? Because that's your number one priority. If you were to have a kinetic energy recovery system fail, then it hands over to the mechanical brakes. Does it just hand over to the front brakes? Does it hand over just to the rear brakes, or all four of them? To manage that and design that from a team's perspective is incredibly hard and can obviously have pretty catastrophic consequences if it's not proven properly.
On that subject, it looked very much yesterday with Lance Stroll that something had handed over to the rear brakes without any warning and quite instantaneously, and that's what threw him off.
Yes.
At turn 11.
Yes, it was like that. You know, first of all, our car is very difficult under braking. I think we've seen a lot of cars locking the fronts, rears. It's not only us, but obviously we're struggling in that area has to be improved.
Well, look how many dark lines there are on the braking zone before turn one. I just spotted that as you were saying it.
And you know, there was some settings that were obviously not perfect, and it just threw him around without even turning in. You know, he was just braking straight, just the moment, and there's many factors that contributed to that, but it's something to do with, the team knows exactly. But Anthony, the point really here is, you were right, there were a lot of black marks into turn one, let's say, but there's a huge runoff area, asphalt runoff area here. But what about Australia? I mean,
there's gravel and grass.
Exactly, and walls, So it's going to be even more challenging. Bahrain is an easy one in terms of safety. It's a very safe track. There's the runoff areas. You can go straight, you can go wide, you can explore the limits and beyond.
And it's a very normal circuit in terms of the energy recovery and deployment.
It's one of the best.
Isn't.
Yes,
exactly. I mean, Melbourne stands out as one of the most difficult challenges for recovery. You're flat out for a much longer time. It's a much higher speed circuit, and every track we'll see this year, every track is incredibly unique. A bit like your graph you were talking about earlier on, Crofty, how it all links back to the battery management, and every circuit we go to is a new challenge to master for all of the teams.
Can I ask a stupid question then?
No.
I mean, it's never stopped you in the past. So.
Don't say no. I do this on a daily, not hourly basis.
knows you very well.
Yeah, sadly.
I can see.
Unfortunately, yes.
20 years we've known each other, and sadly knows there's a stupid question coming. If Melbourne is a challenge for this current generation of cars, and other circuits will be a challenge, is it a challenge that is too much? What I'm trying to say is, do we need to think about the circuits that we go racing on and making them more fitting, or making them fit the current demands of Formula One? I'm not saying we have to change the characteristics totally, but should we in some of them so that it gives the teams a fighting chance, or not?
Just trying to think of, for you, a good analogy, Crofty. I suppose it's
simple as possible, please.
Yeah, so it'd be like you just going to a different commentary box with different equipment in front of us, different screens. But you would find your way. You're a professional. You find your way, and that's exactly how the teams survive as well. You do your homework. You come prepared. You know the challenge that's ahead of you. You might get somebody to send you some photos of the commentary box layout before you go into there. Do you have a commentary box that overlooks the garages, or are you on the garage side so you don't have that kind of information? And you just start to build a picture in your head of what that challenge is going to be. And I'm sure it's the same for anyone at work who have carry on doing the same job but for a different company. It's that that first day at work, everyone can relate to that, or first day in a different school.
And Formula One shouldn't be, we should be looking at difficult challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because difficulty implies they're fascinating and motivating for not only the drivers but also to all the engineers and mechanics. We don't like easy things, and that's why everyone in the paddock, there's a lot of the people are tired. They've been working flat out for that. Not the testing. I mean the pre-season testing. I'm talking about the whole months in factory trying to get power units and cars ready to be here and testing reliably. But they are fascinating fascinated by the challenge, you know, and this is the part of what we were saying before. It's part of the DNA of Formula One, you know. Yeah, Australia will be more difficult than Bahrain, yes, but what about Monaco? You know, won't be easier than Australia. So, but I'm pretty sure that everyone wants to go there and race with these cars there.
So, do you have little sympathy with some drivers who have been quite outspoken about the new cars and the way that you have to drive them?
Yes, I mean, of course I have. I mean, and let's be realistic. They are the only ones that have driven these cars. I haven't done 1 kilometer, so they have a lot more authority than me to say what they feel and how these cars behave. The only thing I'm, you know, from a team's perspective and a spectator, I just think that this set of regulations are new, and we just have to adapt faster than anyone else. You know, I'm not looking at if it's fun or not fun for the driver, or if it's extremely complex, that's for sure. I mean, I only am touching the surface, you know.
Yeah.
Speak with some engineers and I said, okay, stop, you know, leave it here, because it is, I don't need to know certain things, you know. So, but
we've all been there.
Yeah, but it is, I think it's new, it's different, and we just have to cope with them better than other teams. You know, that's the point of view we should be approaching this new set of regulations.
Let's go back to lock up there. George Russell, Lando Norris was the car that was ahead of him, locking up and going wide. George will say thank you very much. Bye-bye in a minute.
That's an example of what you're talking about, though, from a driver's point of view, Pedro. It's you know, you see the car lock up in front of you, and yes, you have a lockup, but your lockup wasn't quite as bad as the one in front, so you've done a slightly better job. And yes. You know, yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it's uncomfortable. You don't like it, but if you don't complain about it and spend less of your energy complaining about it and just focus on trying to do a better job than anybody else, then that's going to pay dividends in Australia.
So in terms of doing a better job, Honda power and battery power against the Adrian Newey chassis, where do the gains need to come from Aston Martin?
Every side, every part, every department, we have to. Well, first of all, we need to understand fully, you know, our package, and then optimize it accordingly. But we have a very clear path of development. I mean, this is very, very clear, and it just is in every single area of the car. I mean, it would be naive to say we just have to focus on this area, because I think that firstly we are far behind. Secondly, we are in the, you know, adapting to a new set of regulations. So, I mean, the cars that we're seeing here, you know, all of the cars, I bet you they will find a lot of lap time already in Australia, all of us.
What did you think of the Ferrari rear wing, by the way? We were talking about that, the collapsible rear wing.
I haven't even seen it, man. No, this is the beauty about
it in a minute.
Okay, no, I mean, you know, it's just that I'm fully focused, and I have more than enough in our team, you know, in our development. It's
true though. When you're a member of a team and you're there on the ground in the garage, you're very blinkered for what you see that given week or weekend. It's amazing how actually when you sit here in the commentary box and you work for the TV company, that you have to see all of the teams. You get a diluted version, obviously, from what all of the teams are doing, but our eyes are on every team. But when you're within one team, you're very self-centered and focused, aren't you? Here's the wing.
So watch this. I described it as flipping brilliant. Watch what it does now. Et voila.
He's stunned in silence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what is the purpose of that, you know, other than to catch Crofty's attention. So I mean, I don't know if it was a test of the actuator, if it was really a way of reattaching the downforce faster, if it was a more efficient way of bringing it back. It looked like a slow way of bringing the downforce back, but they know a lot better.
That's because we've slowed it down. That's a slow.
Yes, but it does the whole turn. So anyway, I don't know, Crofty. I mean, it looks interesting. It's good for the sponsor anyway.
The interesting thing is the actuators are on the side of the wing, so not controlled by the central pillar, like all of the other teams have done.
Except Alpine.
Except Alpine, that doesn't flip 180.
No, so just totally collapses.
So that's what's allowing it to flip 180. Yeah, it's very bizarre. Does it work? I don't know. I'm sure.
Talking to David Sanchez at Alpine, he said, well, I'm a little surprised that other teams haven't followed what we've done, and I'm sure they've looked into it. There is a trade-off with it in that the actuator needs to be a bit more reinforced and a bit heavier, so you're adding weight. He said, but we're confident we can make weight savings elsewhere. And actually said, by the time we get to Australia, we think we'll be on the money when it comes to the minimum weight. He said, but we thought it was worth doing because it actually dumps that much more drag.
Yes, I think you brought something very important there, is the weight, you know, because I think that every decision about car design is taking into consideration weight. So therefore, front suspensions, you know, I mean, we've seen some teams that have, most of them have push rods, some others have pull rods, but in the past it was mainly what's better for aero, full stop. Now it's what's better for aero plus what is lighter, and you have to balance that out. You know, if you are close to the weight limit, and you know that extra actuator or that reinforcing the center pillar or whatever they're doing, which I don't know, will throw you into that area of losing performance just by adding weight or not. You have to balance all that out, and then you have the cost cap on top. So you cannot build unlimited number of wings, and so
That's a very good point, Pedro, because in the days of cost cap now, you don't just try this kind of stuff and develop this kind of stuff just because you can. It has to be a serious consideration and cost involved as well. So they designed that with purpose and probably intention to race it.
And we'll have tried it out here and have sadly gone back to the garage. And if I stand up, they're still working on Lewis Hamilton's car, and not very hard in terms of there's not busy activity going on there. And I'll say what I said half an hour ago, that looks like it's there for the duration and probably until after the lunch break, the way that it's looking in that Ferrari garage. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's now they've tried it, they've tested it, and it works in whatever way it works, that we don't see it again for the rest of this test, because what they don't want to do is give even more clues to the other teams on that one. I don't know how long you've got with us. You're more than welcome to stay for as long as you want, because we're loving the chat. Craig Woolard, by the way, says the only circuit on the current calendar with an older fastest lap than Pedro's, lap record holder here, is Shanghai, Michael Schumacher from 2004.
Wow. The fact that you are mentioning Michael Schumacher and my name together, it's already gives me a big pride. You know, I feel very proud of actually being in that league. But
we often do, to be honest.
But records are, you know, sooner or later it will be beaten. I mean, maybe not this year because cars look a bit slower at the moment. But the moment they re-asphalt, you know, this circuit, and they lay this super black and grippy asphalt that they've been doing it in China and in some parts of Abu Dhabi, you know, it will be beaten. So
I was just going to say, actually, the two common factors that both of those circuits have: very old asphalt.
Yeah, that's true.
So the circuit itself has lost way more than 20%, maybe 50% of its grip that it would yield back then. Not trying to take anything away from you at all, Pedro, of course.
It didn't look like that, though. It didn't look like that.
But yeah, it's. I mean, it was only a year old when that record was set for Pedro, and it was the same. It was brand new in 2004 in Shanghai, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I remember the year that they suddenly, wow, it's going to go right there.
Great shot from the drone, once again, isn't it? It's a very unique view of the track.
When they introduced the lap, you know, the extra point for fastest lap, that made me very nervous, because obviously, you know, at the end of the race, a lot of drivers was a late safety car. People were fitting a new set of tires, recharging the battery on the safety car period, and then go for a fastest lap. It was, but I survived.
You did.
I survived.
It was the only time when Pedro would take off those blinkers we were talking about with being involved with the team, when he would be watching whoever put new tyres on at the end of a race.
You see on this moment that Colapinto had, it was not. I mean, he was locking the rears, not the fronts. So that is the fine line that you get with these regulations. You either, you know, you start locking the fronts, and therefore you move the brake balance rearwards, you harvest more energy on entry, and you end up with moments like this.
Yeah, there's so much more inertia going through the whole drivetrain now without the MGUH, the heat recovery that we used to have.
I think it's fair to say this year, don't blame the driver instantly whenever you see a lock-up, because certainly with the rears locking, it can be very much more of a mechanical issue on that one.
There's a lot more things happening in the background, you know?
Exactly.
That is the point. Yeah, you're right. But inevitably, we all will blame the drivers when you see something like that. I mean, we just...
Hey, talking of drivers, Your team representative at Aston Martin, who have two team representatives this year. Jenson Button will be working with the team as well. Lots of Honda connections. We've already talked about Hungary 2006. I don't know how often you two discuss that one.
Not many times, you know. I try to not bring that up. I try not to bring that race up.
Hungary 2006, when Jenson Button and Pedro de la Rosa stood side by side on a podium together. I remember the TV commentary from that weekend where the co-commentator claimed it was all his doing that Jenson won that.
That was a tough weekend. That was.
Yes.
Doing the
you were already working with BAR.
Honda, yeah. And I mean, so the days when a reserve driver actually worked.
Worked and worked.
Dare I say?
Worked
it's
hard.
true though. Isn't
hard.
It? Hard, very hard. Yeah.
No, it was great to be a test driver back then, reserve driver. You know, the amount of mileage we were getting. I was working there as well with McLaren many years. And
you're an intelligent man, Pedro, in a high up position in the team. What would you like to change in regards to that? As I see a problem for the young drivers today, how do we give them more track time?
Well, good question. I mean, the thing is, already when we are defining what a young driver is, there's a bit of a discrepancy. A driver with you can use a young driver in an FP1 session this year, and he cannot have done more than 2 Grand Prix in his life.
Yeah.
So, for example, Stoffel is not qualified as a young driver, but is it fair? I would say it's not fair, you know, because, okay, he's not young, but he deserves a chance as well.
And it's been a while.
Because, yes, you know, you don't get that extra time. I think that if we don't open up a bit more, I'm not saying massively, because, you know, but a bit more testing, it's impossible to give the young drivers a fair opportunity to be measured against legends of the caliber of Fernando.
Talking of legends, is Fernando Alonso coming in? Yes, he is. That's a shame. We were going to get you to give us a lap with Fernando Alonso, but he's decided he doesn't want the scrutiny, and he's coming instead. So Zach Crawford is your reserve driver.
Yes.
Who can come in and do the
free practice sessions
for this year, of which already we've increased it a bit, haven't we? So it's now 2 per car for the year, except if you're Arvid Lindblad's car, where actually he can get both. He can be the young driver for the 2 FP1 sessions in Australia and China. They don't need necessarily to have anyone in. So there's a bit of that. I was also thinking, especially if, as was discussed at the commission yesterday, the F1 commission, they're thinking of putting sprint races to 12 a season. Well, why not have a certain amount of sprint races that need to be competed in by your reserve driver, by a young driver, for instance, who, you know, you can maybe have a limit of 6 Grand Prix in the past, and make the sprint a bit of a team effort, to be honest, where your Grand Prix drivers have to sit out a few to be replaced by, and the teams can pick, to be replaced by your young driver. That gives them at least some racing experience.
It's those kind of ideas that I think need to be discussed. And also, you know, the sport has never been richer, thanks to the cost cap. So why not bring back the 3rd car?
Yeah.
You know, and that could be outside of the cost cap.
It's sat there at the back of the garage with bits. You might as well have it.
You know, when I was down in the pit lane, I walked past, can't remember which team it was, and I thought, oh, that car's behind covers. I wonder why they're still in the game. It was the other car.
Yeah.
It was completely built up. It looked like ready to go, but the actual car was out on track.
Fair play to Cadillac. They've got 3 chassis, and they've got 3 chassis here, to be honest. So, you know, well done to them. But I just...
Yeah,
more opportunities. Felipe Drugovich is a man that we all know very well, who has not had the single-seater racing experience in the last 3 years that his talent deserves.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a crying shame.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic talent. I mean, Felipe, what a great driver, you know, really is a very impressive talent, I would say. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of ways of giving young drivers extra mileage, you know. I mean, you could actually test on a Monday after the Grand Prix, you know, for giving them, you know, extra mileage. We have to think about what's cost effective, really, because even if it's in the cost cap or not, you have to think about that. Sprint races for youngsters. Personally, I think the amount of potential damage that they could cause to the race weekend would be enormous, because you can have a crash and lose one car, and then you don't have, I mean, you have it compromises the whole weekend. Anyway, there's a lot of things that we have to had. But yes, on the bottom line is that we agree, young drivers have to get more mileage. That's the
particularly for, Ollie Behrman's one of the lucky ones. He was there before this regulation change came about. Imagine how hard it will be for a young driver now trying to get their heads around these set of regulations when they're newly exposed to it.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, when everyone's accustomed to the energy management intricacies involved with driving these cars now. I mean, you mentioned before, Pedro, you get to a limit, speaking to the engineers, of where your brain can go is that complex. And for a young driver coming in, you're even more on the back foot than ever before. That's my worry with where these complex rules are going, for putting my young driver head on from how I remembered things to be back then. It was already an uphill battle.
I mean, the good thing about young drivers nowadays is, okay, they have very limited mileage on the real car, but they have unlimited mileage on the simulator. And they, once they jump into the real racing car, they are so, I mean,
they are prepared.
Yeah, so
ways,
well prepared, and so yes, I mean, but yeah, I agree that they lack the mileage. I think that with previous era cars, with ground effect cars, the amount of downforce that these cars were producing in high-speed corners was very difficult for them, and physically as well. Now with this new generation, I think that the cornering speeds have dropped considerably, so I think they will be more, I mean, more used to it.
Will we see those cornering speeds where Fernando was talking about turn 12 here, for instance? It's not the corner that it once was. With development of the cars, will we see those cornering speeds going back up again? Will things ramp up, or are we always going to be, back to my Venn diagram, limited by battery deployment in corners such as turn 12 here?
No, naturally they'll get faster, because if you think about it, on a circuit like this, if you can keep your drag level the same and increase the downforce, then you can go around a corner like turn 11 much quicker. And that means it's a momentum corner, is turn 11. So momentum will be on your side as you head up the hill to turn 12. And suddenly turn 12 does become a faster corner. It still might not be as challenging as it once was, because you're going to have more grip to take you through that corner. But that means that other corners out there, say the Suzuka S's, for example, would become much more challenging, because there'll be higher speed. You'll have more downforce to take you through those corners. So, yeah, the cars will naturally develop. And, I mean, 2022... when we were at the start of the previous set of regulations, I mentioned it yesterday, the fastest lap here was set by Verstappen. It was a 31.7.
Yeah.
We're not that far away from that. At the same time of the year, but in 2026. So fast forward 3 or 4 years' time in these set of regulations, of course we're going to be going at least 2 to 3 seconds faster.
Just out of interest, I'm just going to break off the chat there as we see Lando Norris coming out of the pit lane. But we have the Red Bull in the background now just being pushed back into the garage, and it was sat in its pit box, and I didn't quite get what they were doing with, because it hadn't been out on the track. So I assume it was a Max Verstappen. It came out of the garage, was pushed into the pit box, and has now been pushed back into the garage again. Is that one of those, they're testing something, pit procedure?
Yeah, I mean, it could very well be a similar test as we saw with the Mercedes, but
I also spotted Pedro de la Rosa, because she's never far from the action. Bernie Collins down there casting her expert eye over what they were doing. So Bernie, did you get a good view?
Always eagle-eyed, or at least trying to be eagle-eyed, Crofty. We were actually stood looking at the Mercedes in the garage as Red Bull had come in and did that practice pit stop. And what they did, I don't know if you've seen it earlier, Crofty, but Pedals, as he's known, was out again with his thermal camera. So they came in, they took the rear wheels off and changed the front wheel, a full practice pit stop on the front. Rear wheels came off, got the thermal camera in, trying to look at temperatures that looked to me of the rear axle, rear brake, drum, that sort of area. So took a few pictures just when the car's nice and hot. Then they took their time, got the car up on the trolley and got it into the garage. So practice pit stop on the front, bit of thermal investigation on the rear, I would say, was what was happening there for Red Bull.
Thank you very much, Bernie. I'm glad you were down at Red Bull there. I just couldn't quite understand why the car was sat there in its pit box, but Bernie has explained that, which is fab.
I mean, as well, you know, when I was down at Cadillac, they were, oh no, sorry, it's Alpine before, and they've said, yeah, you know, just any kind of small anomaly that they see in the data, you will, because it's just a test session, will box the car just to make sure. There's no point running it if you feel like there could potentially, even if it's just a minor detail that's different that you've seen on the telemetry, you might as well box the car, because the work it could create if you didn't act on that, you don't want it coming your way. So yeah, if boxing the car is the safest way when you have that luxury of time on your side to do it. But yeah, it could be a planned item, of course, but there is always that chance that you'll for safety reasons and precaution, you'll put it back in the garage.
Well, it's a test, isn't it? And therefore, you know, we're not about pushing performance with a race in mind to come on the Sunday. We're about testing. But when do we start to really push performance? Say down at Aston Martin, when and I'm sure Adrian's got a few bits up his sleeve, you know, that he's saved for what the last hour of the test, just to give us an indication before Australia.
I think that well, every team is different, have different priorities, and it just very much depends up to what extent of your program you've been able to complete. So if you've gone really through all your program, and you will possibly wait until the last day of the driver test, the last day that the driver will drive here in Bahrain before Australia, and possibly you will try to simulate a quali run in a time that is representative of what type of temperature you will get in the Bahrain Grand Prix. You know, but if you haven't gone through the program as you wish, you have to give priorities. Is qualifying a priority? It might not be for us, you know. So it's every team is different. Some drivers demand and want to practice more qualifying if they've struggled more with the car and low fuel. Given that this is our new set of regulations, I think all the drivers will want to have a go with lowish fuel. When I say low fuel, I'm not saying quali, you know, just to the fumes, but just a lighter version of the car, just to get used to tire warm-up, harvesting and deployment on quali laps. All that is very important this year, and it's new.
Yeah, it's. We were talking about this yesterday, and it's also going from, say, like a sprint weekend, your management, your deployment during a sprint race, to then having a complete reset as a driver to go into quali mode 3 hours later at the very differing demands. And for drivers, it's going to be quite a readjustment for this year.
It will be incredible. I mean, it will be incredible. Just going into turn 12, going back to this corner. You know, I mean, in one lap you go through what Anthony was explaining. You go through turn 11 with more speed. You charge more the battery in that particular corner. You have extra deployment going to turn 12. You might go 15, 20 kph faster than the previous lap, and you have to judge if you can go flat, if you have to back off a bit. You don't really. It's a bit of an art as well. So everything is interesting, you know. Exploiting every little single detail of these regulations is interesting.
And it's not like it's going to be completely new territory for the drivers. I remember speaking with Alex Albon last year on the Skypad, analysing one of his qualifying laps at Spa. And I saw him, he kept pressing this button on the steering wheel over and over again. I said, what are you doing there? You don't give away any secrets, you don't have to. He said, no, I can tell you this one. I'm just toggling the lap time delta on and off, because I don't want it there as a distraction all the time.
Okay.
But what I'm doing is, before I head to each braking zone, like down towards Pouhon, for example, he would just give a little look to see on the delta how he was doing compared to the lap time set beforehand, to see whether the wind was a tailwind or a headwind, to see whether he was gaining time on himself or losing time on himself.
Right.
So he could therefore judge the braking zone depending on how fast or slow he was going. I thought, wow, that is detailed work. Whereas that kind of stuff this year will be 10 times amplified.
Yes.
Yeah.
The different speed you'll be carrying into different parts of the track on your delta, they'll be living on that and trying to, and that's why we might see them locking up in turn 1 so often, or turn 10, because whether you're doing a high deployment lap or a low deployment lap, it changes your speed by maybe 20, 30 kph.
Yeah, it does.
And it's not something that you will decide on.
No.
It's a system that will, you harvest more, you deploy more. It's it's going to be interesting.
Where do you guys get the capacity to do that? What you've just described there.
Yeah, but we're describing circuits where it's not that difficult. I mean, Bahrain, you have a lot of time to think, to look into your steering your display, blah, blah, blah. Spa, you have plenty of time to look into the display and change
you're
buttons.
Still doing
What about
150
Monaco?
miles
What
an
about
hour,
Singapore?
yeah?
I mean, you can hardly check your delta time, let alone all the...
Singapore, yeah. Luckily, though, Singapore is one of those circuits where you're very energy rich, so you don't even have to care about deployment
Lots
or,
of braking zones
or harvesting.
there.
Yeah, lots of braking, lots of off throttle. So you're kind of, you've got a surplus of energy at that track. So yes, you'll see some super clipping at end of straights, but very minimal at that track. So actually, but the flip side of that means that overtaking will be a rarity in Singapore. So you'll actually, on the flip side, you get a lot more drama and potential overtaking on tracks that are energy limited, like Melbourne and Silverstone and Spa.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reliably informed Fernando Alonso is going to go for a flying lap here. So, in the company of the third most successful Spanish Grand Prix driver of all time, let's do a lap of Bahrain with the most successful Spanish Grand Prix driver of all time. Pedro, take it away.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a flying lap or not, but at the moment, I mean, he's not opening the... No, he is the SM, so just going for turn one. It's obviously a very important corner to regen, to charge, to harvest as much energy as possible. Turn 2 and 3 is very difficult with these cars because you start get the deployment and it's very twitchy coming out of there. And now turn 4 is a corner where you have to really, really assess where the wind is affecting you, because it can change a lot the braking as well. You can see he's not attacking massively the exit curves, which means obviously that he's not going for a very fast flying lap. I mean, according to our program, he should be on a long run anyway. And then turn 8, this corner where we've seen so many people lock up and go wide. And then you go head into this double apex, 9 and 10. You bring the brake balance quite rearwards. You have to downshift to first gear in this kink to make sure that you harvest as much energy so that from this turn 10 to 11 you can actually go into 7 speed and very high revs. We can see the lights blinking, so we are already cutting energy there. Turn 11, always very much affected by the wind direction and speed. Turn 12, which is nowadays, as Fernando said, that even our chef can go over flat through that corner, because you are obviously lacking that deployment on a long run. You don't have the energy, so it's easy flat. Last corner, last straight, obviously, and the last part of the lap. You are sometimes, when you arrive here, some teams have still some deployment left and energy. Some others are already empty, and we have seen massive discrepancies on the start finish when you end up the lap, because obviously of what's your strategy. Some teams use a lot more on the out lap, a lot of more energy. Some others to close the lap. So it will be also difficult to follow a qualifying lap and see, because the sectors can vary a lot.
What you're trying to say is, Pedro, you wouldn't want Crofty's job when it comes to qualifying.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, he does a fantastic job. Let's be, now that he's not listening to us, it's always a pleasure to listening to him.
I love this man a lot. He's my new agent.
How much did you pay him?
Didn't have to. He does it for the love, to be honest. It just reminds me, qualifying this year, I'm actually reminded back to when Fernando Alonso was in provisional pole in Monaco in 23.
Yeah, I remember well.
Yeah, and I'm commentating, and Max is 2/10 down going into the last sector. Last sector of Monaco, nobody makes up 2/10 there. And just in the back of my mind, I thought, no, just keep the jeopardy going here. Let's not get too excited that it's going to be Fernando on pole. And I remember saying, if anyone can make up the difference, Max Verstappen can make up the difference. And it was an incredible final sector. And he snatched pole by, just a few hundredths. But I get the feeling qualifying could be a bit like that this year, where you say some will have used their deployment and won't have that boost coming out of the final corner. Others will have that boost, and therefore it ain't over till it's over.
Yes, absolutely.
Jeopardy.
And that's our job, Crofty, and for the fans at home, to suss out which sectors different teams are faster or slower in when they lay down a fast lap time doing quali sims on each track that we go to. A bit like you were fully aware in Monaco that day that the Red Bull and particularly Verstappen was mighty in that final couple of corners. So you were already prepared for what the outcome could have been. And I think we're going to have to, everyone's going to have to study a lot more this year to try and work out whose strengths and weaknesses happen at what point of the lap. So, yeah, in short, it's not over till it's over in qualifying this year, and you can't make too many wild predictions based on the first sector alone.
Study? I'm just going to go and ask Pedro, to be fair. He knows all the answers.
Drag him into the commentary box every time.
I would drag him every single week alongside Martin and myself, or you're going to be in the commentary box with China, I think, this year, which would be great. Alex Thurston says, outside our assumed top four of Merc, Ferrari, Red Bull and McLaren, who do you think could surprise us? Or will the top four dominate between them?
Wow. I mean...
Here's a question.
Yeah, it's a question. I really have no idea, really. I mean, what we can see from this pre-season test is that the four top teams, I mean, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari are very close, I would say. They're really... The four of them are virtually, the differences must be very small.
Okay.
Not in a position really to say... It's just 10 kilos of fuel up or down, could change everything, could change the picture. So
yes, we don't know who's playing games at this stage.
No. And but, I haven't really analyzed their lap times in that detail. I'm sure that other teams will, and our team will do as well during the next few days. But it's looking at the cars through the corners. They look very stable. They look really consistent as well. McLaren doing a lot of long runs and looking very strong on the rear end over the course of a race stint.
I mean, could we be looking at one of the teams, guys, that could be joining right at the sharp end with Racing Bulls? I mean, they're the only other team apart from the factory team, Red Bull, running that power unit. And if it is to be, in the early phases at least, similar to 2014, where it's a power unit championship, and a lot of rumours around there, you've heard a lot of the Mercedes drivers, for example, saying, wow, you have to watch the Red Bull powertrain's Ford engine. That is the benchmark, blah, 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 whether it's actually true or not. But what if it's true? And their grasp on these regulations is better than anyone else's so far. Could this team, Racing Bulls, could they be joining the sharp end or sharper end of the grid?
Well, it's possible. The Williams, we feel, is a bit heavy. Is that fair to say? That
I haven't heard that information.
I have.
But okay, so I'll take your word for it. They're definitely heavy.
Yep, they're definitely heavy. So says a couple of other teams, to be honest. And backing that up, we're led to believe, we know, James Vowles admitted it, they did fail crash tests. And that's fine, everyone fails a crash test, but then you've got to beef it up to pass the crash test, and that adds weight. So if the Williams is a bit heavy and the Racing Bulls isn't, the car that can get down to that with 724 kilos of car weight plus the mass of the tyres. The actual tyres aren't included in that total car weight for this year. So if they can get down to that 724, then they've got extra advantage from that. Haas, I think, are looking in a very decent position. They've had one issue, and that got solved quite early on. I was talking to Ayo Komatsu, and he said that since Barcelona, we've actually had a really good testing program. We've got lots of miles on the board. The Alpine looks stronger, with the Mercedes power for this season. But with every Mercedes-powered team, then there is that talk of fuel and whether they've got the right accredited, homologated fuel and the best out of that by the time we get to Australia. And then Aston Martin, who we're kind of waiting to join that midfield pack. But with all due respect, you're probably not there just yet.
Yeah, we see. We will see.
Cool.
Yeah,
we'll
see.
see.
No. We definitely... I mean, it's just it's in our hands. I mean, we will obviously develop the car from here to Australia. Everyone will. But when you were talking about the weight, it has a huge impact.
Yeah.
Because it's always very difficult to read into the lap times of pre-season testing. Weight of the cars, and now with with the deployment and everything. But then we have to throw in the amount of extra weight or overweight that teams can be, which we don't know. But the question for the teams is, if you like run 10 kilos overweight or 20 kilos overweight, how are you going to, if you're testing here, doing a long run with 100 kilos, are you putting 100 kilos of fuel plus your overweight, or you are testing with 100 kilos, assuming that those 10 kilos are not weight, not fuel, fuel included? It is.
Well,
So I mean, I know it's quite complicated, but the only thing, the message is that don't read too much into the lap times, because it's already difficult as it was. But now with this overweight effect that some teams have, it's impossible.
And also, while we're talking about weight and fuel, because of the new regulation of that 3,000 megajoules per hour energy flow limit, not fuel flow limit, it's an energy flow limit. Because that's in place, it means that whoever turns up this year with the most powerful fuel, you just have to put less of it in your car.
Yeah.
So there's less weight again. So if you've already got a car that is comfortably under the weight limit, and you're placing weight around the car to bring it up to that weight limit, you can get your weight distribution exactly where you want it. You'll be obviously putting it at the front of your car, because there's another regulation as to how far forward your weight distribution can be.
Yeah.
I think it's 46%. It might have changed for these new cars, but I think it used to be 46%. So that if that's your target, because your car's nicely underweight, you can place it where you want, and then you've got this really powerful fuel that your fuel company, sustainable fuel company, has come up with, this great concoction. It means it will comfortably reach that 3,000 megajoule per hour window, that limit, with just a very little amount of fuel in your car. Well, there's less weight in your car, particularly at the start of the race. It'll be a huge advantage.
Yes, less so in the closing stages, but
when you've burned through all of your supply of energy and the
density,
fuel.
it's the key.
Yeah.
I think he should shut up now. He went now into a very complex.
Oh, I should have shut up a long time ago. I don't know how I'm still here.
This is going too much, Anthony. I think that you've gone. This is the second. Is
this very F1?
Yes.
It's gone very
F1. This is
F1.
a PhD. I mean, we go through the undergraduate.
Professor Waffle over there. Have you not heard him so far? He is the expert on this sort of thing.
It's you know what? It's painfully Formula One.
It is.
All of that. But that's what this sport's about.
But this on the fuels, and look, I'm with you. Right? I don't understand it, except a very clever person involved with fuels for one of the teams said to me, what we're doing is we're scraping waste off waste to create a sustainable fuel. So take your waste that we can't use, and we're scraping the even more wasty bits off that, and we're turning it into a sustainable fuel. And that, I think, is a mega concept. Yes. And I preceded that chat with, you remember that bit in Back to the Future where Doc flies in the car and he rummages around in the bins, and he pours a bit of liquid in a banana peel or whatever into the back of the DeLorean, into the flux capacitor. Well, that was the engine. The flux capacitor was what did the time travel bit. My mate Danny designed that. It's great. And I said, and then it flies off again. That's what you should be doing with the fuel this year. To which they replied, what makes you think we're not? I'm like, what? So what makes you think we're not? That's where we're scraping, get your banana peel, we're scraping the waste off the banana peel, so to speak, on that one.
You're saying that kids out there, Crofty, should watch Back to the Future 2 before they start watching Melbourne this year?
Yes.
Just to understand what on earth you've just spoken about.
I watched Back to the Future 2 before Back to the Future 1. It makes much more sense. Although Back to the Future 3 I got completely lost in. Yes. However, I mean, anyone should watch Back to the Future. They are a great trilogy of films. My point on the sustainable fuels are, though, there's 1.6 billion road cars on this planet, that one day, with an acceleration of technology of sustainable fuels, we might be able to power with something that F1 has kind of contributed to. That is a brilliant legacy for the sport.
It is fantastic. I mean, and obviously Aramco are working so hard. They worked already hard, to make it closer to a sustainable fuel with F2 and F3 in the past. Now they're fully sustainable fuel. And basically the message is what is a sustainable fuel, because it's just to produce this fuel, you are taking carbon from the atmosphere, from the world, basically, and eventually you will burn it, and you will, obviously the exhaust pipes will bring that carbon back to the atmosphere, but it is carbon net zero. So basically, we are not contributing to any impact on our environment, you know, which is the beauty about this. And this is a technique. This is obviously where the technology is leading us, and with millions of cars in the future, we'll eventually get this sustainable fuel, which at the moment for a normal road car is very expensive. It's already expensive for Formula One, but I'm sure that with the proper technology approach and development, it will get to a decent price.
I think I'm right with my figures. It's something like $400 a litre, ballpark figure. Some might be more expensive, some might be a little less.
Yeah.
But it's about $400 a litre. It ain't cheap.
So only you could be driving around in that kind of sustainable fuel, Crofty.
Because I don't go very far. Yeah. I take my car.
Yeah, but it's coming down. Huh?
Yes,
You know, and I think that Formula One will contribute to that price going down, because the amount of development that is being thrown into the e-fuels basically is phenomenal.
Yeah, this immense competition in Formula One drives you to be better in everything, in every department. Whether you're a driver, mechanic, team principal, that competition, it demands perfection.
Now, talking of demanding perfection, pit stops in Formula One, we always demand perfection. We like to see a driver in and out in about 2 seconds. George Russell is about to come in for a pit stop. Bernie Collins is down in the pit lane. How perfect will this be?
I expect it to be pretty good, Crofty, because this is about the 6th pit stop they've done in a row. They've been in and out, in and out. George comes in again. This one, they're practicing a 5-second penalty. Now, I've seen the front left corner guys all agree with each other that they needed to wait 5 seconds. Get it done. Still a delay on the rear right, I can't quite see. And then get it out again. But I'm telling you, Crofty, it is hot down in this pit lane. I am suffering with my Irish skin. And these crew have all been out, done about 6 pit stops in a row. That one practicing the penalty. But nothing speaks more highly of how well a run plan is going that on day 2 of testing, you are doing pit stop practice. And for me, that is very, very strong from Mercedes. I actually, as I was coming to the pit lane at the start of this shift, I seen the second crew come in and I wondered, why are the second crew coming in? Because normally they have a night crew and a day crew. But they're coming in so that they've got a full crew to practice those pit stops. And that speaks very strongly, I think, of the position that the Mercedes is currently in.
Couldn't agree more, Bernie. They've consistently been doing a lot of laps. 76 for George Russell for the morning session, and that is more than any other driver.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to see so many pit stops. Also, it's interesting what their driver program is. You know, if tomorrow it's Antonelli, so if today, this afternoon, Antonelli will switch. It's very dependent, you know, where are you up to in your program, personal program.
We bumped into Kimi Antonelli earlier on, and he said he's going to be in the car after lunch break today. So, and he's looking forward to having some extra laps under his belt, because I think in terms of the laps that George Russell has enjoyed in the car compared to Antonelli, I think Antonelli so far has been the unlucky one.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
And has, especially last week, spent too much time in the garage. So, yeah, he'll be looking for a better afternoon today.
While we were hearing about pit stops from Bernie, Lando Norris has had a series of adventures and misadventures out on the track. So this was the final corner.
Yes, he went wide there.
Yeah, not handling well. But there was a massive lockup down at turn 8. Ollie Behrman was behind him, and here's another Mercedes pit stop.
The 7th pit stop.
7th pit stop, and that looked a lot more slick.
Yeah, it's definitely quicker, and they didn't hold the car. It wasn't planned to hold the car by the looks of it. But looking at Norris's tyre lap chart here, so it's 13 laps that set of hard tyres had done, and previous to that an 8-lap stint. So yeah, they were getting towards the latter part of that first stint in a race, if you like.
There was a lot of smoke.
Yeah,
I think it's a big lockup.
I think the Alpine as well, you know, it's just doing some practice starts at the end of the pit lane.
On the subject of pit stops, so we've talked about the start procedure, and we're going to see another experiment at the end of this session. for the new starting procedure. We'll talk more about that as and when it happens. But drivers are obviously having to hold the revs and keep the car revving whilst it's up on the jacks.
Yeah, so you'll come in like before. You'll be in the pit lane on the pit lane limiter, which is another challenge for the engine manufacturers. The pit lane limiter and how cleanly the engine can run this year compared to previous years. So you'll be on the limiter and you pull into the pit box. You just press the clutch paddle all the way to the end, so fully depressed on the clutch. Keep it in first gear. So you stop momentarily and then immediately you'll hold your revs on the throttle. Higher revs in the pit stop compared to what they'll do at the start. Because you've stopped for less time.
Yep.
It means that the turbo's spooling down for less time. So it means you'll have fewer RPM held in the pit stop because you're there just briefly, and then you're off on your way. It's still a very difficult process, but I believe the process in the pit stop in the box is easier than the start procedure.
Yeah,
which it needs to be.
well,
luckily it's easier.
I think that the difficulty at the race start really is that if you keep the engine, you know, high revs in first gear. Now we can see the pit stop. The rear right didn't go in properly.
But also that's good for a driver, and I don't know if they're deliberately having a bit of a sticky rear right there, because that's good for a driver who will be expecting, you know, a 2.5 second pit stop, and away we go. Actually, they need to be able to react to however long the pit stop might be. It wouldn't surprise me if that's a deliberate thing that they've factored in.
I'm with you on that one, Crofty. It looks like it was fairly deliberate there to hold the car, to make sure. We all know how hard these cars are to get off the line,
Yeah.
and in the pit box as well, as just discussed. So why not throw some drama in there? Why some unpredictability, and see how A, the driver copes with it, B, the power unit copes with it, and just throw a few random surprises in there, which, like Bernie was saying, if they're at the stage in their program to be looking at those small details now, I think that speaks volumes for where the team is, how comfortable they are.
Bortoletto's just gone 5th fastest, by the way, and he's done that and on the prototype tyre, or the tyre without the markings. Now, yesterday you were asking, what is this tyre? It's from Turkey. So basically, it's a C3 compound, but it's not made in the same factory as all the other tyres. This is a Turkey tyre from the Pirelli factory in Turkey, and they are using them and testing them just to make sure they're absolutely identical to all the other C3 tyres.
Yeah,
makes sense, doesn't it? It's a test.
Yeah, so we did wonder yesterday whether it was in fact a softer compound. Maybe a different construction, different temperature range, who knows? But yeah, we knew it was a prototype tyre. It is. It's just made in a different country.
Yes.
Compared to the other tyres, which are from Romania, I think. Yeah. So it's just a different source, and they're just trying to see whether they have that consistency across the.
Pedro's looking at you there, going, "How do you know that?"
I mean, I doubted myself from the people I'd spoken to whether I remembered it or not.
It's the sort of thing he memorises.
Oh, he's good, huh?
He's very good.
Yes. I'll double check with Pirelli, and it might be another country.
It might be another country, yeah.
He's very, very good, trust me. Second fastest today is Max Verstappen in this session. About 1/10 of a second between himself and Lando Norris. We've not talked much about Max Verstappen. He has just gone about his business and will be doing so after the lunch break as well. He gets a full day in today. Isaac Hadjar had a full day yesterday. The car just looks nicely balanced. It looks like it's compliant, doing what Max wants it to do. I'm not trying to put the commentator's curse on, I promise. It might get a bit squirrely out of turn 11, but then it isn't the only car to do that. It might lock up into turn 10. Oh, we're not going to see it.
It is always beautiful to watch Verstappen drive, how much, even in testing, how much he's always using that extra half a meter of asphalt, you know, with a whole car braking over the exit curb, but keeping touching, you know, not, well, inside the track limits.
made his way to the end of the pit lane, but as the red light is on, he can't leave the pit lane. This will be a test to see how long the car can stay at the end of the pit lane for. Because it might just be, when it comes to qualifying, that you want to get out first and run for quite some time. Here comes Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari.
And I'm sure that they will test at the end of the pit lane. You know, they can do a heat soak test. You know, see what how many minutes they can be there with the engine running. But they at one point they will switch off the engine and then make sure they can restart it with a K. You know, so there's so many procedures that will be tested in this red flag.
Hunting for secrets here, you don't have to say yes or no, but is the Honda power unit capable of restarting in that procedure from your knowledge? Okay. Because it's one of those things that when that rule first came along, with the power units, when they changed to hybrid in 2014, a lot of the teams couldn't have that functionality. It wasn't built into the design. Some teams did.
Was it Renault who first did it?
Honestly, I can't remember, but I do remember that Mercedes didn't have that functionality in the beginning, so they had to sit there with the engine running in those moments. And you realise very quickly that some other teams that could restart the engine from the kinetic motor, that they had an advantage. But you could send the car as early as you wanted down to the front of the queue and just turn your engine off, because you could restart it again.
Yes, that was the first year, but then after that, I think everyone saw the beauty of of actually being able to restart it with the K, which was, you can do it. It's part of the regulation. So, and especially now with queuing on a Q1, Q2 scenario where you're trying to get the most out of the traffic, it is essential.
Practice at Red Bull for Max Verstappen. Lando Norris had come through the pits just before him. Is Max not going out to do a start?
No, visor up.
Interesting. Red flag. So the man with the green flag to oversee from the rear the start procedure has now wandered into place. I'm surprised that they're not going to take part in this practice start with Max Verstappen. I mean, he might well come out in a couple of moments after they pushed him back to the garage, but he's definitely going into the garage as the light now goes green and the cars make their way to the track. The message was race will resume at 13:55. That's a standard message that the FIA put out on their timing screens.
How frustrating for Hamilton. You finally get back out there and now you have to go through the same procedures everybody else, and it's just less than 5 minutes remaining, and I'm sure he wants to get out there and a few more laps under his belt at higher speed.
Well, he's done 5 laps, Lewis, and that's it. So, and that to me is not a planned 4 hours just to do 5 laps. So there's been an issue at Ferrari. What is that issue? Why has that car been in the garage for so long?
I'm sure we're going to follow him, eyes on that rear wing like a hawk. On the exit, you only see it open until the exit of turn 10. It momentarily opened before turn 4.
But if this is a formation lap scenario, would the active aero activate?
Yeah, why not? I mean, as long as you're full throttle, if you're full throttle and you press the button,
there we go.
Yeah, so it's...
It is very much depends on what's your state of charge of the battery. You know, if you need to recharge more, you will use the SM button and open the wings. If not, it's just...
This is what we're saying about it, though. It's, it's not DRS. You whenever you're in that zone, if you're flat out, you use it. It's not a case of just going down the straight faster. It's just... It really should just be automated.
Yes.
I would be pushing to just automate it. If it automatically closes within zone, say like before Copse Corner at Silverstone, for example, you'll have straight mode open before Copse, and you can easily, in some circumstances, take it full throttle. Well, it's not going to close, so it has to close automatically. And if it closes automatically and you're relying on that, why not open it automatically? So I'm sure in time it probably will be like that.
So there was a lot of discussion about standing starts and starting of races, whereby the cars need to avoid the turbo lag, and they need to be holding the revs for an awful lot longer, and the normal start procedure wasn't necessarily allowing the drivers to do that, especially those towards the rear who would settle not as early as those on pole.
Just watching Ollie Behrman, so they're on the second row. So I wonder if they've been told to purposely leave enough space for the cars in front, both Norris and Behrman.
There's the man with
Left
the
a
green
big
flag.
gap, look.
Now,
Yeah. It would be wise to do it, actually. I mean, there's no
Absolutely.
point in being, you know, just close by.
so there goes your flashing lights to say we're about to get going. We're actually going to have an extra formation lap.
Yeah, aborted start.
So they've aborted the start and they're now putting an extra formation lap in, which is all being displayed on the board. You can't quite see, but we can from our commentary box.
Yeah, Norris was using that opportunity. I could hear the revs very high. He was using that opportunity to get a proper practice start in, so he didn't just drive away casually like the other drivers did. I could hear the revs held high, and that's why he was stationary for that time, extra than the others. So aborted start, and it's again, you know, from everyone's point of view, the FIA, F1, they should be practicing these procedures before the first race. And what a great time to do it.
So, let's talk you through. Here we go. So, red flag, cars back in pit lane, line up in the fast lane. This is the procedure that they're going through. Pit exit open, cars leave, pit lanes go back on the grid, which they did. That extra formation lap was planned by the FIA, because they need to know what to do for an extra formation lap. Remember Brazil a couple of years ago, a couple of seasons ago, I should say. The car's back in position on the grid, and then there will be a 5-second blue pre-start warning. So we were talking about what could they do, and I said, well, just put one red light on and then do the rest. So they've gone for pretty much that, but with a blue light going on, and then the standard light procedure after the 5-second blue pre-start warning.
Any idea where this blue light's going to be? Driver level or gantry level?
I always look for blue lights, and as you well know, whenever we come to driving, you know, just to be on the safe side and move over if an ambulance or what a fire engine's trying to get past. But I have no idea where the blue light's going to be. I'm assuming it'll be on the gantry to the right of the 5 lights.
So is that your, do you say 5-second warning?
5-second warning.
Before the first red light comes on?
Yeah. So we have the cars.
That'll be a nice cue for you, Crofty, won't it, as well, before lights out and away we go.
I'll get interested. The blue light.
Start warming your voice up.
La, 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 and away we go.
Right, so this should be the real one then.
Yeah. Where did they get the blue lights from?
Oh, now they've all lined up in a different formation.
Yes, because they know this is going to be a start. So, on the grid, guy with the green flag is now waving it. Where's that? Oh, there's
the blue,
the blue light
panel.
on the side.
Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And all the revs are going.
And it's lights out and away we go. And sideways, George Russell doesn't get off the line well.
Look at that
Lewis
Ferrari
Hamilton,
off the line.
McLaren is
absolutely
still
lightning, as was Ollie Behrman and Lando Norris in your own time. But, I mean, look, George didn't get away well.
He got away better than Lando, who did the practice start previously.
That's very true. But Lewis Hamilton, had he left a space? Like, had he left
I think he left
a row, and then he parked on row 3?
He left, I think, yes, yeah, one whole row he was behind, yeah. One whole row as a space behind, so yeah, and still managed to easily pull alongside and overtake. That, I mean, it looked great off the line, didn't it?
Yeah.
From if this is our first snapshot, what we could expect come Melbourne, you'd have to say the Ferrari was a rocket off the line. So let's listen to this.
Look at the McLaren on the left. I mean,
Wow.
They
And then here comes Russell. Look how much... Oh, he didn't just pull alongside, it annihilated him.
Well, Lewis Hamilton, the style of a greyhound that traps well.
The reaction time was exactly the same. Look at the wheel spin on Russell.
Yeah.
Huge wheel spin. That was the reason why.
I wonder if the other teams knew that what the procedure with Lando was, and it was on purpose or not, because if you kind of don't start when you have to, and you have people behind you, and if a practice start is dangerous.
Right, these are all procedures that need to be done, dusted and solved before Australia. Lando Norris, though, with the fastest time of the session, 10th of a second, just over, ahead of Max Verstappen. George Russell, bad start at the end from him, lots of wheel spin. Third fastest, Alex Albon fourth fastest, and Gabriel Bortoletto in the Audi was fifth fastest. Russell 77 laps, with the most laps of any driver in that session. Lando Norris put in 72. Lewis Hamilton with that great start, but only 10th fastest in the times, 5 laps only for the Ferrari in that session. They need to get more laps on the board come the afternoon. And the afternoon session will be with us before you even know it, in about an hour's time. There is George Russell. Once again, Mercedes absolutely consistent and getting the reliability, and 7 practice pit stops as well. Max Verstappen didn't do the practice start at the end, put in 56 laps during the course of the session, and running on the C3 medium tyre throughout that entire morning session. Lando Norris mixed it up, C3s and the C2 tyre, and had the fastest time of a 1:33.4. Anthony Davidson and Pedro de la Rosa, thank you for your company, gentlemen.
Welcome.
It has been brilliant. Pedro was only meant to be here for half an hour.
Yes.
Enjoyed it so much. He stayed with us for the duration, and I'm really glad you did, sir. But for Lando Norris, I'm sure there'll be smiles over the course of the lunch break, as he put in the fastest time. He'll hand over duties to Oscar Piastri for the afternoon session to come. McLaren flexing its muscle and stretching its wings out in front. Alex Jakes and Jolyon Palmer will be back in an hour's time. Anthony and myself will be back in 3 hours.